Annus Horribilis, the game that shouldn't have ended, is the kind of story that creeps under your skin and lingers long after you've finished reading. It starts like any other night in the Jeopardy studio. Bright lights, nervous contestants, the hum of an audience trained to watch in polite silence. But for Mehal Shah, something isn't right. The air is too heavy. The pauses last a fraction too long. And when he makes one tiny mistake, one missing letter, it sets off something he can't explain. At first, it's just an unsettling feeling, a reflection that doesn't quite match, a whisper he's sure he didn't hear, a presence lurking in the edges of the game, as if Jeopardy itself is watching him. But the deeper he looks, the more the reality he trusted begins to unravel. Was it just a misspelling, or was there something else at play? A game show should be simple. A winner, a loser, and a neat conclusion. But this time, the game isn't finished, and someone, is making sure it never truly ends. If you love eerie, slow-burning horror that makes you question what's real and what's just a trick of the mind, this is the story for you. But be warned, once you step into this game, you may find it's harder to leave than you expected. Annus Horribilis, the game that shouldn't have ended. The studio. The Jeopardy stage was a place of order. Bright, sterile, calculated. Contestants filed in, cameras locked onto them, and the audience obeyed the silent command of reverence. The rhythm was practiced, seamless, a well-oiled machine with no room for disruption. But something about tonight was off. Mehal Shah felt it before he even stepped under the glare of the studio lights. It wasn't the usual nerves. This was deeper, colder. The air carried a wrongness, a static hum that tickled at the edges of perception, like an errant signal bleeding into an empty frequency. He had chalked it up to the energy of the moment, to the anticipation coiling in his gut. But as the game began, the feeling didn't leave. It grew. Mehal played with precision. He saw the board not as scattered categories, but as a tapestry of knowledge, patterns forming and unraveling at his command. The game unfolded as it always did. Question, answer, points, control. Then a misstep, a daily double, a simple question. This island nation was once known as Formosa and is a major hub for semiconductor production. Taiwan. He answered it instinctively. The syllables rolled off his tongue, but the moment they did, something shifted. The word felt wrong, like a key turned in a door that should never have been unlocked. Ken Jennings nodded, but his smile was too fixed. His expression stretched at the corners, like someone listening to a sound only he could hear. Mehal forced himself forward, but the air had changed, thickened. And then came Final Jeopardy! Latin phrases. Something in his stomach twisted. The screen flickered. After Camillagate, a fire at Windsor Castle, and marriage problems in her family, Queen Elizabeth II dubbed 1992 this, he knew it instantly. Annus Horribilis, he wrote quickly, hands steady despite the unease crawling up his spine. The whispers at the edges of his mind grew louder. No words, just a presence, threading through the air, burrowing into his thoughts. A second of hesitation, an instinct he didn't understand. He changed something. Time was up. The answers were revealed. The first contestant, wrong. The second, wrong. Then his own. What is Annus Horribilis? One missing, a slip of the pen. And suddenly, the world held its breath. Ken Jennings hesitated for just a moment too long. His expression flickered. His gaze was distant, unfocused, like he was waiting for something else to speak. Then, his voice, flat, hollow. I'm sorry, but that's incorrect. The words dropped into the air like a stone into deep water. Silence. The audience did not react. No murmurs, no sighs of sympathy. Just an unnatural stillness, like they had been instructed to hold their breath. Mehal swallowed, the weight in his chest pressing against his ribs. He turned toward the producers, shadowed just beyond the lights. The figures there were unmoving, their faces obscured, unreadable. Then, the final totals. The other contestant won. Just like that, the game ended. Hadn't it? The locker room. The dressing room smelled of old carpet and something stale beneath the cheap deodorizer. Mehal sat alone, his microphone still clipped to his collar. He hadn't moved, hadn't checked his phone. He was stuck in the moment, replaying it over and over. It had been a simple mistake, one letter, one missing I. But why did it feel like more? He finally pulled out his phone, scrolling through the Jeopardy subreddit. Reactions flooded in, sympathetic, confused, angry. Tough but fair. He was robbed. He knew the answer. Shouldn't that count? His own comment stared back at him. My heart broke pretty hard when he explained why I was ruled incorrect. But rules are rules. It's been a strange journey for me. He closed the app. The air in the room was wrong. Thick, pressing, humming just beneath the threshold of sound. The television in the corner was off, its black screen reflecting his image back at him. But it wasn't right. The lighting was distorted, the angles too sharp, the reflection too still. He leaned closer. A slow, deliberate tap from the other side of the glass. His breath caught. His reflection remained motionless, but its eyes were different, too focused, too aware. And then his mouth moved, but his own lips did not. The reflection whispered, forming the words in perfect silence. You should have won. Mihal stumbled back, knocking over his chair. The screen blinked black again, swallowing the image. Silence. His heart slammed against his ribs. He grabbed his things and bolted for the door. The hallway was empty. The overhead lights buzzed with a frequency that itched at the back of his skull. The studio lay behind him, quiet, expectant. As he stepped outside, the cold air hit him, but it wasn't real. It was the idea of cold, a memory pressed into place where sensation should have been. His phone buzzed, a new comment on the subreddit. The username was just numbers. His score from the game. Annus Horribilis, indeed. His hands trembled as he turned off his phone. The game had ended, hadn't it? Epilogue. The Jeopardy set was empty. A janitor moved through the space, sweeping the stage, wiping down podiums. He had worked here long enough to know the patterns, the rituals. And yet, as he reached Mahal Shah's podium, something made him pause. A faint mark on the glass. He frowned, running a cloth over it. But it wasn't a smudge. It wasn't ink. It was carved. One word, deep, jagged, final. I won. The janitor swallowed. His breath fogged in the air, though the room was not cold. The letters remained. And somewhere, beyond the reach of cameras, beyond the walls where the show was supposed to end, something whispered. Something laughed. Because the game never really ended.